welcome to Healthy in a Wild World. Another special episode with another guest. You guys have told me that you love these, so we are back with more. This is the podcast where you learn more about holistic health, life strategies, tips, tricks, things to make your days better so that healthy habits are created with daily practices. And today I'm talking with Paula Tobey. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Okay. She is a life coach, and that is just the start, you guys. When we sat and talked, I swear we probably could have talked for several hours and had a lot of fun doing so. It was so much fun to talk to you. So, welcome to the podcast. If you wouldn't mind, would you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So, yes, I am a life coach. I'm a former teacher, and I started helping parents with what I like to call tricky kids. So maybe they are identified, maybe they're not, maybe they're getting help, maybe they're not. But I tended to work back then with parents that had kids with ADD or ADHD or autism or, things that were harder to, sometimes parent. So I did a lot of parent coaching. And along the journey, I realized that a lot of those families, their kids had issues with food and nutrition and fueling their bodies and their brains well. And along my own personal physical journey, I stumbled across a book that literally changed my life, and it became kind of my aha, but also my sanctuary and Bible at the same time. And the book is called The Gut and Psychology Syndrome, and I read it, I think it was 2012, around the same time when I was getting my health coaching certification. So I first got my life coach certification, and then I got my health coach certification because I knew I could help parents with their kids in another way if I did that. And I learned a lot about the gut-brain connection and how my own past childhood experiences were, seeing them on the page. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I started connecting all kinds of dots. And fast forward a couple of years, or maybe about a year, my uncle was diagnosed with cancer. And I was reading about different things in the book, and I was like, oh my goodness. And I shared it with my mom. And she was very close with her brother because he was a adult when he was diagnosed with autism. And he grew up a long time ago, because he would be in his 70s now. No, I'm sorry, in his late 60s. But he was diagnosed as a young, young person. Back in the day, they called it EMR. And it's almost like the F word.
Yeah.
To call someone that today. But he later was diagnosed as a 54-year-old as autistic. And so it was a huge kind of relief, but also kind of wake-up call as I'm reading in this book all of these signs and symptoms and things that are connecting all kinds of dots. Anyways, fast forward a couple more years, and then my mom gets diagnosed with cancer. And I am like beside myself reading this information and realizing, had I not changed my diet a few years back, I would have been next. And I knew then that my mission changed from literally just life coaching and working with parents to getting on the bigger stage and teaching women and teaching moms and people in general about the gut-brain connection, about health, and about how we can transform our lives if we learn little things to do that don't drastically, affect our lives. Now, are they easy? No. I mean, I totally had to change my diet and lifestyle and, you know, but luckily when the gut heals itself, usually you can add back in a lot of things, which I have since done. Now, in the process, of course, and as you age, you put on more weight. So I have to make sure I don't beat myself up about, what I look like today versus what I look like, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But I am absolutely at a better place physically and emotionally and all the things. Um, and so it definitely has become a and I call it I wrote a book and I'll talk about that in a second, but I call it in the book a realization and responsibility factor, because when I realized that I had this knowledge, I knew that it was my responsibility as a teacher and a coach to share it and to make sure that other people understood that these things are not life sentences. They are not inevitable, and they can be fixed and they can be reversed. And it has been amazing to be able to share basic information and knowledge with people that literally can transform lives, and has, like, it's been wonderful. So that's a little bit about a very long introduction, but a little bit
I
about me.
I love it though, because I remember you and I talking about gut brain connection, and there we have an ADHD connection, and because I know I have it. It was diagnosed later in life. As a kid, I was told I was just hyperactive and go get her some exercise and she'll be fine.
Mhm.
Um, she has ear issues, so that's why she can't hear you.
Uh-huh.
And we've talked about my older twin being exactly like me.
Mhm.
So there's
Mhm.
a lot going on with my kids where I'm managing a lot of their symptoms, a lot of the things I recognize in the chaotic toddler brain. I'm
Mhm.
managing a lot of it with food and paying very close attention to their gut.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I one of the things I will have to say is this right here, this introduction is part of the reason I was so excited about this episode. Um, I'm excited for people to hear about it from someone other than me.
Yes. I understand. And believe it or not, I feel the same way. I think people get sick of hearing me talk about it as well. And the more connectivity we can do with each other, and the more building each other up as, podcast hosts and entrepreneurs and all of the things, the better off everyone is. Uh, yeah.
I agree. I agree. It for some people it sounds like you're hearing gut brain connection, and it's this term that's just popular nowadays, but this has been around for a very long time. I'm
Yeah.
grateful it is as mass media friendly right now as it is.
Right.
It kind of sucks that there's some connotations associated with it, but it's been around for a very long time. People just haven't been talking about it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So I remember first hearing about it when no one was talking about it. Like I said, in 2012. Um, and for me, I was just coming off of my own issues. So I started my lifestyle transition at the very end of '09. So early '10, I was going through a elimination diet, and I was taking out all of these problematic foods. I essentially got a blood test taken. Now, back in the day, I had to pay $600 out of my pocket, but I'll tell you, hands down, that's $600 I ever spent. At the time, it saved my life. It gave me my life back. I needed that. And it literally transformed everything for me. But anyway, the blood test revealed that I had a lot of issues going on. And so I removed all the problematic foods. I was down to 17 ingredients of things that my body said, yes, you can have this. Now,
Mm.
over a period of time, not long, a couple weeks, I added in a little bit more and a little bit more. And then I started challenging. And what you do with that is you test something that comes up as reactive, and you wait and see and take notes and whatever. And I always go by the three strikes rule. 3 times if I have an issue and I note what it is and it's a similar issue, then I know what that food does to me and it's done and I can move on. But it took me, with my most problematic foods, it took me 7 or 8 years to have the guts to bring them back in because they caused debilitating migraines. And I was not willing to give myself migraines like that, all the time. And so I just wouldn't do it. And finally, I was reading more about the gut and how when it heals itself, you can reintroduce things. And I was like, oh, well, it's been about 7 years, and that's pretty a good time frame. If someone does the radical of diet that I did, they could probably do it within a few years. But I didn't really know that then. Again, there wasn't as much information and certainly
Yes.
not people to talk to about it. And I finally started challenging things and adding things back in. And it was so nice because at the same time, uh, we as a family, our kids started getting a little bit older and they got out of the only eating toddler type things. And,
Yeah.
so it was nice to be able to expand my palate along with theirs. Yeah, so that was fun. But I can't tell you how enough how revolutionary this book, The Gut and Psychology Syndrome, was for me. And um, it meant, like, it was such an awakening and such an aha thing for me that when I shared my story later, I referenced that book over and over again. And it's because, one, obviously, like you, it gives credibility to someone else. It's someone else's voice, it's someone else's knowledge. But this woman had been doing this from the 70s. She
Yes.
started her research in the 70s. And that's how long they have been tracking, and at the time they talked about color, dye being bad, right? And I remember my mother would not allow us to eat colored cereals and, because they heard that it was bad. And, it's when I think food and nutrition first started making its way into people's minds, as far as they knew that there was probably good evidence that you shouldn't do it. But obviously, there was no such thing. I mean, we were all still using encyclopedias, right? Like
Yeah.
there wasn't books in the library on this yet, you know?
Didn't
Um,
exist.
no, no. And so it's obvious why it's taken so long, right? There's such a lag. And yet, on the good side, on the flip side, we have so many tools and resources within our fingertips. And this podcast is evidence right here of how important it is to spread awareness and get the message out. So I have learned my new calling is education on a whole, and it is for the family, but is particularly for moms and women. Women tend to be the leaders in the helm of getting the family healthier. Let's
Yeah.
just be honest.
They really do. It's kind of funny. In my husband's, with his parents, it's his dad more so than his mom, but his mom plays
Okay.
a crucial role. And for us, it's always been me, but I've been in this field for so long that it's that's a hard sell to anybody else. Is it's like, well, of course you are. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, but I would say a good 90%, 80 to 90% of my clients, the ladies in the home, they
Mhm.
are at the helm. They're making those decisions about health and wellness.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that from an emotional standpoint, a woman has this empathy component that they don't want to see others hurt, or they don't want to see them suffer or whatever. That, I mean, we hear about that, the emotional heartstrings are, tugged on and whatnot. And when you learn about some of these adverse reactions that happen, it can't your heart can't help but be, you know
Mhm.
be pulled on, because the when you really think about what it is that you're learning, the connections, and you weave everything back in together, it literally makes perfect sense. I mean, there is nothing else that explains like anything. However, modern medicine tells us treat everything separately. Everything has its own little compartment. But I'm just going to say that I'm reading this other book that's very enlightening, and it doesn't surprise me much that we would think that way, predominantly because doctors have been males, and males tend to compartmentalize.
Mhm.
And, you know, it just kind of makes sense if you think about it from that broad perspective. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of funny that now we're finally catching on, right? We're
Mhm.
finally catching on. But I do think that it's been women that have helped push through that the most. But
Yeah.
that's just my personal opinion. I can't
Well,
prove that.
we can't prove it, but so part of my education was learning about the history of medicine. And because my degree's in complementary alternative medicine, obviously it favors that side of the health.
Hmm. Hmm.
But one of the key factors and the key core moments in those history classes is the transition from traditional healers,
Hmm.
which majority of the time were women,
Hmm.
to what is now modern medicine. A lot of medications, when they were first discovered and first created, were created originally from things that the healers were doing.
Yes, plants and potion. Well, not like ground form, right? Like I say
Yeah,
potion, but it then turned into oils and all the things. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And then they turned all of those into
Hmm.
prescription medications. And over the years, they started using more chemicals and synthetic ingredients as those became available and
Yep.
those were created. But the original source of healing and health treatment came from traditional healers and medicine men and women.
Yes.
And
And
they
you were right. They were predominantly female.
Mhm. Yep. And when science was created, it was a male-led field, and they
Hmm.
decided we are superior,
Hmm.
therefore
Hmm.
traditional healings are out and we are in and nothing else matters. And that's how we got here
Right.
where we're
Somebody talks, right?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the minute you let
Mm.
society talk to each other, and
Yeah.
on the scale that we're doing so right now in this digital world, I mean,
Right.
to me, it's a no-brainer that we would have this full circle.
Yeah, it really is. You're absolutely right. And I don't think that it is by any stretch of the imagination that when I started on my journey discovering this, in the book that I'm referring to, I have it over here, but it's kind of out of my reach. But anyway, um, it is written by a female. She happens to be a neuroscientist. Also, um, she's in, let's see, she's I think also registered dietitian, but in natural foods and all of that kind of stuff, nature. And those were her two fields of expertise. And she was one of the first to help uh, families with kids with autism and help them to navigate that world, and by eating a specific diet which she coined GAPS, is the gut and psychology syndrome. And often when her children were put on these diets, their symptoms disappeared and or were very, very minimalized, right? They were, maybe it didn't go away completely because, again, everybody's gut is different. You have different levels of health within each person's body. Um, but for a majority of her patients, they received a lot of improvement. And I knew for me that was enough information. And then when I learned about my uncle and then my mother, I went back to the book and I really, really read it then. And I scoured it and I marked up pages and I flagged them and I knew it was important for me to go back to. And then later, when God gave me this vision of sharing this message of health and wellness and, all of the things, I knew that I needed to do more with, what I had learned from that book at that time. And the first thing I did was I put on a conference. I put it on a conference at a church for women, and I discussed um, 5 different things that I had learned on my healthy living journey that helped me become a better mom. Now, it's not only for moms, but these 5 things are for everybody and anybody. But they were just what the lessons that I learned on my journey as a mom. And so I put on this conference. It was very successful. It was so much fun. And at the end of it, I knew there was more to it than just a conference. I knew that, one, it wasn't my doing. It was totally God. It was almost like I had nothing to do with it. I was just a vessel, right? Um, and everything fell into place so amazingly well that it also wasn't me. It wasn't orchestrated by me because I can't do that, right? As much as I would try and fight, I can't do that. But because it was a God-given dream and his pushing or whatever, then I had the guts to do it. And I put on this conference and I just gathered people around me and they helped me and it was amazing. Um, and that started my movement, which I called phenomenal living. And the word phenomenal comes from a Maya Angelou poem that at the time, it's called A Phenomenal Woman. And at the time, I listened to it and I listened to her read it. It's on a YouTube. You can check it out. And her voice, still to this day, it goes in my brain. It's so awesome. Her confidence and her ability to carry herself, right, as a woman in the 70s, a Black woman in the 70s, was astounding. And I will tell you, I am listening to this poem. My kids are playing in the background, tears streaming down my face because I'm thinking to myself, how is she this confident? What is she is amazing. What is it? And I was like, no, she is phenomenal. And I was like, that's so cool. And just that teeny tiny little thought tucked away later came out, and this God-given dream just started becoming born, just started birthing out of me. And I learned to become phenomenal along my mothering journey and these lessons that I started learning. Anyway, so long story short, I knew I had to do something more with this. So I turned it into a book. That is what this is. Becoming a Phenomenal Mom, 5 Steps to a Healthier Life. And the 5 steps that I talk about are 5 healthier ways to live your life as a woman and as a mom. And all of these connections that I'd started making from a point of reflection and a point of growth, I share with moms. So I tell a little bit of my story and a little bit of my background. And then I give a little bit of research and I talk about what it really means and where that's stemming from. And then provide resources and reflection so the reader can, kind of dig into it a little bit more. So I'll just show you really quickly what I mean. So this is kind of interactive in that there's questions that you can answer. So I talk a little bit about my story or something, and then I do a little bit of teaching, and then ask, what about you? And then ask you questions that you can reflect on your own life, to help you kind of understand where it is that I'm coming from. And then um, go on a little bit more. Each chapter is like that. So you have your reflective questions, but then sourcing where I got the information from, and or things that I did that I recommend to others. So I wanted the book to have QR codes in it and have them right there, because let's face it, no one's going to read a book and then go over to the computer and type out www dot blah 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 blah. They're just not. That's not how we are today.
No,
So
no.
I had the QR code right there that could be scanned with the phone right then, and she can, she, he, whatever, but they can have the resource available right then and there. And I think that that was invaluable, because uh, it helps, one, validate, what it was that I was talking about, but two, give you something immediately that you can do, right? So one little step that you can take, one teeny tiny thing that you can do tomorrow. And so the foundation of the 5 areas is your physical health, your emotional health, your educational health, your financial health, and your spiritual health. And when you work by baby steps, learning, growing, all of the things these 5 areas, your life starts to take a different path, and you start to grow and learn and evolve, right? It's not rocket science, obviously. For me, it was my journey of growing up, right? As happened to be a mother, but there were so many ahas along the way. And because of that, I knew I had a responsibility to start sharing them, because some of them were quite frankly revolutionary. I grew up in a military family, and we moved around a lot. And my parents worked really hard, but lived paycheck to paycheck, as most families do today, right? Um, and the military lifestyle it used to be, it's probably better today, but it used to be very heavily reliant upon, families relied upon credit cards. And so because of my parents and because of the way that I was raised and what I knew, um, when my husband and I got married, we incurred a lot of credit card debt. Now, we didn't live extravagantly buying the latest, greatest gadgets or anything like that. There wasn't anything like there is today, first of all. Like some people had cell phones, but, there was, but
Yeah.
we flew home to see family. And, when you don't pay that off, interest accrues, and, sooner or later you have a lot of debt. Now, I had student loan debt, because my husband did the military route, and so he didn't necessarily have to pay back what I did. He did it in service, but um,
I
but
understand.
yeah, yeah, we had to learn how, and so I talk about some of the lessons that I learned in there, and how it helped me, as a mom, make better decisions for us as a couple and for our family to make better decisions. So I share that kind of information in there. But more specifically, the process that I take the reader on in the book is literally helping them discover what areas they could probably work on or use a little bit more focus, and try to encourage them and try to provide some resources for them to be able to do so. So an example is, if there's a woman who's been a stay-at-home mom and she's been out of the workforce, and she all of a sudden is, facing empty nesterhood.
I
Empty
don't.
nesting.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't know how to say it either.
Yeah. Empty nest, whatever. Yeah. And she's just like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. What do I learned about this fabulous resource. It's a Berkman personality profile, and it helps you discover not only your personality, but what jobs or what professions match well with that. And I thought it was an invaluable resource that not enough people know of, that really can help someone figure out, yes, I always knew I could be a blank because of, and this shows you, right? It's an invaluable resource. And so, therefore, this book isn't necessarily just for moms, but anybody at any point of life where they are, excuse me, in transition or in, uh, you know, we call it the gap. It's a general assessment period. They're like, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I go on? And you have a decision to make during that gap. You can continue or you can stay. Stay stuck. Stay stuck is safe, but do you really want to do that? Is it in your best interest? And so this book helps to show and guide and encourage women to be able to go on and take those small steps. So in a nutshell, that's what it is.
It really, a lot of it does dive down, especially those 5 areas. A lot of my clients, a lot of people I talk to, they don't expect me to talk about financial wellness,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it's a core component. If
Mhm.
you're chronically
Mhm.
stressed and you and I are working on trying to improve your health by focusing on your gut health,
Mhm.
but you're not paying attention to that,
Mhm.
or you're strapping yourself so that you can work with myself or somebody like me,
Mhm.
it's not helping you.
No, absolutely not. And it's funny that you say that because I literally found in my research, um, in that section, I literally found things that help point that out to people, because it is the number one stressor amongst married couples and families. And the stress involved alone can literally knock the gut out of it knocks it into dis-ease, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where the word disease comes from. It is dis-ease, then it's not able, because of the stressors, because of the chemicals that go through the body during that time frame, literally can cause like conditions to happen. And one of the most common is back pain, headaches, diarrhea. All of those things are completely normal, literally just from stress. We
Yep.
know money is the number one or two in marriages, stressors. So, yes, absolutely correlation. And I'm so glad to know that you talk about it, because people have to realize everything is related. We were created as one being, we were created as one, and everything relates to everything else. And when we recognize that and honor that, I believe we automatically live healthier.
Yes. I have to agree with that. I've turned people down and I have turned them away, not to somebody else, but to a different avenue, because they've sat in sessions with me and tried to figure out how to cover the cost. It's like, well, okay, first of all, no, we are not doing this. We're going to find a different way that's not going to add to your stress levels. We need to decrease them, not increase them, and not keep them the same, because the results that come out of stress, and there's more and more studies nowadays coming out, but they're very recent studies.
Mhm.
And I know there have been quite a few over the years that have been done, but there's also a lot of discrediting of those studies, which is very frustrating,
Sure.
because
Yes,
there's so
there
much
is.
credibility in what they're saying, and it's been proven time and time again, but because of other avenues, the political landscape specifically,
Mhm.
they're trying to negate these things, when in reality we need to know these things so that we can help. The stronger that we are, the healthier that we are, as individuals, the
Mhm.
healthier everything else becomes. It's a domino effect.
It is. Yes. And as women, our role in the family, I believe, because of our nurturing, upbringing, and those are all parts of our intricate parts of who make us women, we're more inclined to be those teachers and nurturers and leaders of our family. So therefore, it's of course we're going to lead them into either a healthier direction or not. And what's unfortunate is when the I believe when the male dominated, Western mindset of wholeness or wellness starts to play so much in everyone's vocabulary, we kind of negate our own instincts, right? I love to use the phrase gut instincts. One, I love to talk about gut brain connection, but they're a real thing. They are, and you can ask any mother out there, there is never a time when there is not a mom to be like, huh, what, oh, I have a feeling, or right? Everyone knows or heard of these instinctual feelings that come from intuitively in the gut. And we also know that the gut is the second brain. Therefore, we can give credibility to our gut instincts because it is thinking differently than our actual brain. And if we present our if we are presented with a fight or flight situation and fear is in front of us, then we then need the second brain to take over and to provide those instinctual responses because our brain isn't capable in that moment of making those decisions, right? And so the better and the healthier we are, specifically the gut is, the better we can handle those situations. And when it's times of stress, and let's say it's a money issue, when your gut is slowed down and clogged up, and let's say, you know, stomach aches, headaches, all the things that arise from, not being well, it's not rocket science to then take the leap to say, could that be affecting how I think and feel?
Mhm.
Of course. And could that affect my money situation be affecting the absolutely. Everything's intricately intertwined.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. We had an experience this weekend with the boys. And I mean, granted, they're almost four, so they're toddler brain, but they have that chaos brain. And
Mm-hmm.
once in a while, we'll splurge. We'll do things like we'll get donuts for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not a normal occurrence, but I don't want them to grow up feeling like things are out of their
Mm-hmm.
reach. I want them to
Mm-hmm.
feel like, oh yeah, okay, we got this treat, great, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we got donuts, and we got mini donuts,
Mm-hmm.
so it was relative to their physical
Mm-hmm.
size.
Mm-hmm.
One donut threw both of them into such an emotional state for the whole day that the
Mm-hmm.
amount of toddler meltdowns, tantrums
Mm-hmm.
significantly increased. They didn't understand what was going on. They just at that age, you have that
Mm-hmm.
chaotic brain.
Mm-hmm.
They're still just trying to figure out how do you compartmentalize all these feelings and deal with them in the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
it was ridiculous. It was absolutely insane. And it's one of the reactions that I wish I could have a camera on in the entire,
Mm,
kind of like, MTV's Real World, doing
mhm,
reality shows to show people the effects, because these little guys, our little kids, show us what as adults we hide and we push away.
mm,
Don't have that ability yet. So there's
mhm,
no way for them to hide a reaction that's emotional based on something that they ate or because of the state of their body, the state of
mhm,
their health and wellness.
mhm, mhm,
They just react honestly, and it's a true reaction. And
mhm,
I'm grateful that as adults we don't do that, but at the same time there is some level of awareness when you're seeing that, and you're able to
mm.
identify where the connections come from, where it came
Yeah,
from. It-
yeah, and the actual trigger was something so simple as a mini donut, you know? I mean, and it's kind of mind-boggling because and then just think about the number of things that we consume every day and give zero thought to what it is, what it's doing, how it's affecting us, and then long term, the damage that it's causing on our gut, on our brain, on all the things. And when you add up all of that, it says a lot. It says a lot about, as a country, how unhealthy we've become.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's definitely one of those things, and I'm grateful that there's so many of us out here now having conversations like this and putting them up,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and helping people to understand that it's not hokey, right? And that it's not woo woo.
It's not.
It is real. It is scientific. It is factual. Like,
Mhm.
and honestly, that was one of the reasons why I put QR codes in my book, because I wanted for what the words that I was saying to, like, I wanted the person to be like, oh, she's not really making that up. You know what I mean? Because eh, I think that sometimes women as storytellers, right? We're very strong in the skill of communication. We have the ability, and men tell us this all the time, specifically husbands, so we can inflate stories or go on and on, and and I just really wanted to put it out there that I was not making shit up.
Yes,
you know
yes,
and
yes.
that this stuff is real, and the more we recognize that and do something about that, the better off we will be, and then the sooner, right? The sooner the better.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is such an empowering feeling to get to the point where all of a sudden you see things lining up. You see that your choices each day are actually helping you sleep better.
Yes.
Whether it's nutrition or it's, activities or it's financial, it really doesn't matter.
Mhm.
If you're looking at your days and now at the end of the day, you're able to actually put your head down and rest the way that you should be,
Mhm.
and you can
Mhm.
see and identify those pathways and the choices and everything you did that day, so you
Mhm.
can just rinse and repeat every single day.
Yes.
It is such an empowering feeling. You feel
Yeah.
like the weight of the world is lifted off your shoulders. And it doesn't
Mhm.
mean that the stress has changed any or the stressors have disappeared. It's
Right.
just that you're able to recognize where you need to mitigate them, where you need to support your response to them. Because
Yes,
that the
exactly.
only
Yeah.
thing we can control is us.
That's right. That's
That's it.
right. And that's why I wanted in this book to provide women with tools, actionable steps that they can take one little baby step at a time. Because there's nothing more empowering than learning, okay, if I do this and this outcome happens, and then I do that, oh my goodness. And then you can increase your speed. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, I've totally transitioned, and now, we've gotten rid of all of the,
Yeah.
whatever, soda, right? Like we
Yes.
and providing people with those tools, I think, is what's paramount. And I learned early on that that was my new mission as a teacher.
I agree. I agree. It's definitely something that like we talk about. I always talk about daily practices. I teach my clients daily practices because the daily practices become habits, and then those
Mhm.
habits become instinctive. So now you're just living life.
Yep. Like
You
brushing
gotta
teeth.
practice it.
Yep.
Like, yeah, it's like brushing your teeth. It's like playing an instrument, playing a sport. You
Mhm.
got to learn these things if you want to get good at them. If you
Mhm.
want to excel in an area, you have to practice. So
Mhm.
why not practice your health? Yogis practice yoga the whole duration of their lifespan.
Mhm.
You're never an expert in your own health. You just get better at managing it.
Yep. And you evolve and you learn, what works for you in your body at that time. And that's not to say, because I'm learning myself as I am in the state of menopause, um, that your body can change significantly, even if you're doing the same things, or even if, what you were doing once worked now doesn't necessarily. Uh, it's challenging. And I think that the more we can build each other up and help each other out to be successful and to be encouraged and to be equipped, the better off we are. Not only as a human race, but as a whole, like the entire world, right? Like the more we work together, the better off we are going to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the whole concept of you are living a reality. It's not the true reality. It is just your reality. And having other people to support you allows you to put a better, more comprehensive view on your puzzle, on your life, and the things that are actually working and not working. You get feedback,
Yes.
and
Constantly. Yeah.
you get a better perspective of it. So,
Mhm.
well,
Mhm.
you have a big event coming up, and I know that's part of the reason you and I were talking when we were, because I wanted to make sure that everybody had some insight into that.
Very cool. Yes. So, um Mother's Day for me starting last year when I released the book and then this year is pretty big because it is my mission to help other women understand and learn and go on a growth and spiritual and all of this journey as well. And so every May I've decided that I need to offer my book, the ebook version, for free. And so starting on Thursday the 9th through May 13th, the ebook version of Becoming a Phenomenal Mom will be free, and I'm excited about that. But on Saturday, I actually locally, through a friend who owns a boutique, I get to do a book signing. So I'm excited about that. Yep. And then I'm launching um, for newer entrepreneurs, am also launching a mastermind. And as a life coach, I have learned that uh, when we have other people who are entrepreneurs and who can, come alongside us and cheer us on and give us, feedback and, answer questions or whatever, the better we do in our business, right? It encourages us. We feel more equipped and more prepared. We have a sounding board of a group of people. Anyway, so I've been a part of masterminds for years, but God placed it upon my heart that I should start my own. And so I'm doing a soft launch this summer. And then this fall, I will be opening it up to the masses. So I'm super excited about that. And then also in the fall, I get to be a speaker at a conference. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
There is
Oh,
a lot
and
going
I
on.
have a senior who's graduating. So, and then I will be empty nesting. So yeah, I'm kind of gearing up for that, you know, when they're off time and I'm like, what am I gonna do with myself? This is what I'll be
There you
doing.
there you go. And if you're watching, you're interested in all of that, links are going to be in the show notes. We always include information down there so you guys can find our speakers easily, quickly, and
Yeah.
that would be
And
great.
just because it is limited, a limited time frame, this is Mother's Day of 2024, and the ebook is free from May 9th to May 13th. But physical copies are always available, both on Amazon, all the time. So there you
I
go.
love it. Yeah, and this episode is going to air on May 8th. So you guys you'll get a little bit of a heads up. We'll put it out there everywhere so that see if we can spread the word and get some people into that book. Because I know off the top of my head, there's several people who could use that book.
That is the goal for me. I Sometimes there's a mom out there that's like, oh, this particular chapter helped me, but my sister really that's what I want.
Yeah.
That is why I put it for free, because just because you may not, or that's fabulous that you're doing really well, right? But I guarantee you there is a woman out there that is absolutely suffering and she needs tools and resources and to know she's not crazy. I mean, I went to a counselor. I didn't even go into all this, but I went to a counselor to rule out being depressed. And she said to me, I don't think you're depressed. I think you have food allergies. she happened to be a registered dietitian. She'd stopped doing that. And that is what started my whole journey. But it was that irritability and that, I was just like, you know, that's what prompted all of it. And it was because of her and those steps that I took back then in '09 that all of this even happened. So anyway, and I talk about that in the book. So,
It's okay. It's always good to repeat things. I'm pretty sure I've repeated myself multiple times on this podcast. Um,
oh yeah, yeah. But
yeah.
my coach tells me all the time, repetition is a gift. And the reason it's a gift is because just like when you read something and then 5 months later you read it again and it's totally different, right? The Bible does that, stories do that, all kinds of things, right? And depending upon where you are at that point in your life, it can speak to you very differently. And I believe that that's exactly what is going on here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's so powerful to hear everybody's stories because you never know who out there is living almost parallel to what you were in 2009.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know, you never
Yeah.
know.
That story is not that different, you
Mm,
know?
no.
And I didn't speak about it, right? Because a migraine is an invisible dis-ease, right? It is a autoimmune gut issue. And when you get down to the root of it, everything is, right? But we don't know this. We just know we don't feel well. We know that we're not thinking or we're slow to react or we have brain fog or, whatever. And we know our head hurts or our, joints hurt, the basics. But that's the body alerting us. Warning, warning, something's going on. Something's going on. We just have to tune in. That's our job.
Yes, I always tell people you have to figure out what your symptoms mean, what they're indicating, so that you can respond to them,
Yep.
so that your brain knows you're paying attention. Because if your brain thinks that you don't know what you're doing and you're not able to respond appropriately, it's going to send more until it decides you're not listening at all and it
Yeah.
starts shutting things down.
Yes. And that's exactly what
Um,
happened to me. Hmm.
and
Well, I've taken up your time. I so appreciate you having me on today. Thank you. Thank you. It's been wonderful.
being here, I appreciate you being here. And for everybody watching, all the links will be below, and I will see you next week. Thank you again for being here. Cheers, everyone.